So, hello everybody, and welcome to Print Island. I'm Jacques Michiels, and I have the great pleasure to be joined by one of the major companies in the world regarding the paper industry. But yeah, I thought by myself, we always talk about production machines and automation. But of course, we cannot deny the substrate because it's hyper important. And there's a lot of change going on in that field as well. So I'm delighted to have here on our show Marco Eikelenboom. Marco, good day to you.
Good morning, Jacques. Very happy to be able to join you during this show.
And Marco, maybe just a quick introduction, like an elevator pitch type of thing with Marco Eikelenboom, and what do you do?
Started many moons ago with a Dutch company called KMP, the Royal Dutch Paper Mills. Through mergers and acquisitions, always stayed in the industry, and ultimately ended up since 97 with a South African company that acquired the European activities called CEPI, South African Pulp and Paper Industries. And since then, I've seen a lot of parts of the world, lived for a couple of years in Paris, in Johannesburg, Holland, Belgium. And recently, since April 21, I've been appointed the Chief Executive Officer of Sappi Europe. Again, part of a bigger conglomerate with three divisions: a South African or Southern Africa business, a North America, and a European business. We're around 40% of the group's total in terms of revenue. Still very dependent on graphic paper. We're in a transition towards new applications, new segments, new products. We'll probably talk about that a little bit later. And since 2 years, I'm the chairman of CEPI, which is the industry federation, Confederation of European Paper Industries. The biggest in terms of pulp and paper, more than 500 members joining the association to speak with one voice, strong shoulders, positive outlook to the policymakers, to the stakeholders. Very interesting. It has been a super enriching experience. A lot of work, much more than anticipated initially, but that's how it goes. Also, I'm into my last 2 months right now, so the incoming chairman is there and will be prepped for his new 2 years.
Okay, so we're right on time then, just to catch you in the last months. Yeah. Okay, Marco. So thanks for this introduction, but let's dig in straight away because, as I was saying, the substrate in the whole equation of our printing industry and printing companies, in my mind, is a bit overlooked sometimes because you have huge challenges as well. I think nobody can deny that in the past decades, we as users of papers and so forth, we have seen quite some decline in the usage and in the tonnage of the paper that is that's being used. But yeah, if I speak to the printers and the graphic industry, you know, the green agenda and sustainability is like top priority. So how do you and Sappi come together in this equation? What is your goals as a major paper producer to basically establish that sustainability, and how does that affect your business?
Yeah, that's the key question, and it makes our industry still very relevant if we crack that nut basically in terms of sustainability. Divided into two aspects: the production process and the product itself. So let's start with the production process. We are one of the leading industries, the high energy or energy intensive industries, that has made significant progress on the decarbonization of our production processes. And that's mainly around energy. The process itself is a matter of natural resources like pulp, a lot of water and a lot of heating. But the heating, of course, needs to come from an energy source. And that's where we have spent an awful lot of energy, research, and money in getting to that right balance. And it highly depends on where our mills are situated. That basically determines what can be done or what are the restrictions to to your right energy mix. Very different from Finland to Germany to Italy, Austria, the Netherlands, Maastricht, which, by the way, might be the most telling example that we have. In Maastricht, we have not an own energy plant as such, but we're very intertwined with the grid of the Maastricht city and actually of southern Limburg or southern Holland, Netherlands. What we've done is we have invested in 2 e-boilers in the meantime, which you could compare to a massive water cooker. And through these e-boilers, we can electrify the energy source, which is a gas turbine in Maastricht, and we can stabilize the grid. We are the first official grid stabilizer in the Netherlands. So right now you have, I think it's 7 official energy companies and CEPI who are able to connect themselves to the grid in order, and it's a pretty horrible name, but they call it a prosumer, a big producer and a big consumer at the same time. But that's the status that you need to have in case you want to be able to stabilize the grid. So what needs to happen if it is a sunny day with a lot of wind, the grid is most likely oversupplied. There's too much electricity on the grid, and CEPI, as a flexible operator, together with Enexis in the Netherlands, is then able to take off the energy from the grid and instead of other energy sources, use the partly renewable sources that are being provided to the grid. And yeah, this, as you can imagine, is a big advantage for the mill, but also for the Dutch energy network. The other way around, if there is no sun, no wind, we will supply through the e-boilers, we will supply electricity to the grid. So we're an energy producer. And this game of this trading game has led us to a whole new situation where first and foremost, we're working on energy efficiency, clean energy, but also we're almost a societal role that we stabilize the grid in that part of the Netherlands and now try to entice a lot of other companies to do the same with the technology that we have developed.
Oh, that's very interesting. I didn't know about that. So it's basically balancing the grid basically for the whole area. Yeah. So
absolutely. And what is so interesting, Jacques, is that this comes on the base of what a lot of people, you alluded to it in your introduction, what a lot of people call an old industry. Maybe some even say, well, it's a dying industry. What is a mill like CEPI doing in the middle of Maastricht? And that's the interesting part, that we have found a new role apart from the primary role of producing the best paper in the world at the most competitive cost to the most interesting customers. We now have this energy hub that is giving us a whole different perspective on how an industry should evolve itself. Very interesting. Last point. Commissioner Wopke Hoekstra, who is the commissioner for climate and for the clean industrial deal. That's the basically the follow-up of the Green Deal that Commissioner Timmermans hashed out. But the clean industrial deal is all around of course, clean industry, but also competitive industry. And that's exactly what we're doing in Maastricht. He's been so interested that on the 9th of May, he spent a full day visiting our mill in Maastricht. Incredibly interested. And we see the learnings and the experience that he found during that day. We see it back in some of the plans that are now being developed by the European Commission. So quite a phenomenal story and something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, I can understand. Maybe to roll on to the printing industry, because as you've explained, let's say maybe rather old-fashioned image that paper production had in the past has now, as you just explained, has become like a prime role, an exemplary role in the industry, and also benefiting basically the society to give it other tools, and where you basically have created a new place for your activities, even in crowded areas like Maastricht. But if we roll on to our industry, and it's very, very interesting. So the same discussion also takes place at the printers and in the factories and so forth. So what innovation do you see or what we see as a game changer for graphic applications then for the printing industry? You must have a good idea for them as well.
Yeah, and that was my second part to the equation. So the first one was the sustainability around our production process, and I can talk for hours. This was a example. The other part is of course the product and how to get the product to our customers. That has to do with scope one is our production. Scope 1 emissions is all around our production system. The rest of the value chain is covered by scope 2 and 3, how you treat your suppliers, but also how can you minimize the emissions while getting the product to your customers. And that's where we invest a lot in the most climate efficient ways of transport. Of course, we're looking more and more to train connections to our customers, or at least having central hubs so that 80% of the track is being covered by train, and only the last leg is being covered by truck. But also the product itself. The moment you are able to produce a product with, as I just explained, the most energy efficient means, the most water efficient ways of producing paper, then the sustainability footprint of your product is getting higher and higher. What is the difficulty is that in graphic applications, the product over the last 3,000 years has been developed to such an extent that we cannot expect an overnight revolution for a piece of paper. So what we're doing is not necessarily looking only at the product, but looking at the whole process from our mills, the transportation to the printer and his printing process itself. One of the things that we started to look at and develop is something we called, it's got a different name right now, but it called at the time Octoboost. A lot of Belgian printers have been involved as well. And it was basically how to get to your perfect print pattern. So how to lay out your printing images such that it makes the most optimal use of the sheet of paper, perfect pattern. And that is a very interesting, with all the algorithms and the AI tools that are currently available. It's a very interesting way of optimizing the use of your sheet of paper, or to minimize the waste. And the interesting debate and it's a debate that took place 10 years ago, where the initial reaction would have been, the waste that we sell. Just imagine that you can reduce the waste for a sheet fed printer, which is up to 25%. 25% of the paper that he's buying is not being used. It's just being cut off because it doesn't fit the image. And the initial reaction 10 years ago would be internally, yeah, but hang on. That is also product that we sell. So if we reduce the waste for a printer from 25 to 15, we're losing 10% sales. And I'm saying that is the complete wrong discussion to have, because our competition is not the other paper mill who can supply the product at 2% lower cost. That is the name of the game. That will always be there. Yeah. So I'm not looking to paper mill A, B, or C, because they're quite irrelevant in this discussion. I'm looking at the online media. I'm looking at the other ways of communicating. I'm looking at becoming too expensive for printers to use paper anyhow. And that's what I would like to prevent. So I would like to get that sheet of paper, that pallet, at the lowest possible cost, with the lowest or the minimal amount of waste and the highest sustainable footprint. Yeah.
So the value for your customer, basically, to increase that, so he can be more competitive as well. Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense.
Because I've seen it happening when in 2022, when paper prices collapsed because of the energy crisis and because of the uncertainty and because of the scarcity. We had to increase our paper prices, but it came at a dramatic loss of applications. People just thought it became too expensive.
Well, maybe going into a bit on that statement. Of course, paper, it has a cost, and also, the changes here. Other generations are coming, and everybody thinks of what will be the place of paper or paper related products that need to be printed in today and in the future, because the future of graphic paper and print media is under stress. So what in your opinion is, say, the future? What is your outlook to become more clever in the usage of print, and how is it sexy enough? Is the overall idea with people or with younger generations that it is sexy enough? Is it high tech enough, perceived as high tech enough? How do you see evolving basically your product? Do you think there is still a good future ahead, or what would you give as advice to some of the printers out there that are looking how should they adapt to the new situation in regard to paper and print?
Yeah, I think it depends on your definition of sexy enough, of course, because I love the product. But what I love most is the experience, flipping through a reading book. Last night, we went with my wife. We went through a couple of photo books, just the printed version of your holiday pictures on your phone. What a phenomenal experience, and you do it because you've got something in your hands, and you don't always want to search on your phone. And then it's so the sexiness is, to me, is the experience that you find in using paper. While Maastricht celebrated it, I keep on turning around Maastricht because it is such a phenomenal mill. It celebrated this 175 years of existence. So since 1850, we're making paper on the riverbank of the Maas. But while I was on my way to Brussels, back to the office, I stopped at the Dominicaner church right in the middle. It's close to the mill, right in the middle of the city center, which is turned into the most beautiful bookshop I've ever seen in my life. More beautiful than the sexy Barnes and Nobles in New York or whatever. And the amount of people and the experience that comes over you is just overwhelming. Of course, there's a nice coffee bar. You can have your newspapers, but just the experience of having all these paper products there and being there in this massive church with only books surrounding you. And there were at least 100 people, maybe 120 people searching, flipping through books. A phenomenal experience. So that's the sexy part. The high-tech part, I don't think we should overestimate the high-tech element of a sheet of paper. Let's face it, we will never win against online media or iPhones and technology. It is way more advanced and high tech. The high tech sits in, as I just described, the production process, and there I would like to touch a little bit on another part of sexiness, and that's circularity. I think we're the next generation, even more than you and me, although we're not that old. But the next generation, even more so, will not only look at the product and its application, but also at its life cycle. And Europe can be proud to be the absolute world champion in paper recyclability. It's over 75% of all the products is being recycled and is being turned into a new product. From the high level, which is Sappi's core business, graphic products for the most beautiful art books or weekly magazines or economists, you name it, to the lower level graphic applications, to the newspapers, to the carton box, to ultimately the lowest level of use. But a fiber starting from, as we call it, fresh fiber that we use in a mill like Maastricht has 7 lives. So the circularity is just very, very exciting. And I think that more than the technology of a piece of paper is something that will create excitement at the next generations. I'm pretty sure.
I think you're absolutely right. And as you were referring to, maybe we'll come to also your chairmanship of CEPI. Which is the Confederation of the European paper industries, because in before, kind of printed materials or was regarded as mostly as a waste, as you just referred to. So I was wondering, how, and I think that is also a very important element in the future also for coming generations to, as you said, they have to rethink again the fact that paper or even printed papers and so forth, it's got 7 lives, as you say. So how difficult is or was it for you as chairman, because you go into discussion with the legislation makers and so forth. So how did you come about to get that shift from that waste perception to, let's say, in a more sustainability type of product that is reused? And then that also makes a little bit of the technical sexiness, I guess, of the material, that it is reused, and that in the end, people, legislation or lawmakers perceive paper and printed products in a different way in the future.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Let me give you an exciting example and a challenging example on how to go about the connection with policymakers. First, and I've said it many times, there is a shift in the Commission from not having a seat at the table, but being on the menu. Talked about, they didn't talk with us, but they decided for us. So we were truly on the menu rather than have a seat at the table, to now having claimed that seat at the table and being a partner in the discussions. I truly see that. And I'm very excited about it, that we have the right to debate and to have the right for a conversation with the policymakers. So that's very exciting, an exciting development. Part of that is being stimulated by their own regulation, and that's another exciting element. For example, the single-use plastic directive that came out of the Green Deal was something that clearly gave us a way out of that ever-declining graphic business. What did the single-use plastic directive, as UPD, say? That by, I think it was initially by 2030, all plastics that are only used once, single used, should be banned. And yeah, initially they said we would go rather for reuse, so plastic containers or glass containers. But that's, of course, not a solution for your Mars bar or your Kit Kat, or that needs to be wrapped in something. You can't just put it on the shelf. And there is where we saw a huge opportunity for paper packaging. So from plastic to paper, based on the regulation that came out of the European Commission. So a phenomenal symbiotic effort. And that's where a lot of paper companies currently, including Sappi, are working with brand owners on how to have the circularity of paper packaging, which plastic doesn't have, but the specifications or the attributes of plastic, because it should be grease proof, it should be it should have oxygen barriers, it should have UV barriers. So you need to have a barrier protection coating on the paper to have the same characteristics as plastics.
Yep. But then, of course, have the recyclability of the product as well after. Yeah.
Exactly. And that is where
that's probably the challenge.
Exactly. That's the challenging part. So you see how interesting it is to ride this wave of policy making, but also to keep my own members in CEPI all aligned. And it is extremely difficult, because we call it functional paper segment is the future for a lot of us. If we can make this transition happen from plastic packaging to paper-based packaging, wonderful.
It's a huge market.
It's a huge market, and it's I'm having several conferences next week, the 19th of November, Forever Green, which is all around paper-based circularity, and with a lot of brand owners, and they're very excited about this opportunity. There are a couple of things that we still need to tackle, which are not the smallest things. It's manufacturability. Paper runs different on your lines than plastic. In that sense, plastic is a beautifully flexible product. Paper is more complicated, and of course the cost. And we need to find a way to get these variables into one equation and one compelling value proposition to the brand owners. But you touched immediately on something that is a big topic within CEPI, and that's why it's not always easy to speak with one voice. The recyclers, of course, see this as a risk to their waste streams that they need to treat, and I fully see that. But on the other hand, if you make that too restrictive, then the innovation power of the industry declines dramatically, because the brand owners will say, well, if you can't treat the paper that way, then we rather stick with plastic. So the conundrum is complete, but it also, I'm still so convinced that we as an industry will find that compromise somewhere and will have the best possible position for brand owners, policymakers, and of course our own members.
I think it's a wonderful discussion, a very interesting one, with I think a lot of challenges, as you say, because if from my view, I mean, if you take a parallel with electrification in the automotive industry, I mean, that took quite a while, but when the code is cracked and everybody looks in the same way, and there's legislation that also supports that route, basically, it could well go quite quickly at some point if you crack the code, of course.
Absolutely.
With all the variables that you just explained. So that's exciting, and also I think mega important for the printers and the printing industry, because if at some point this shift becomes reality and comes as let's say the what's the right word, the first choice of packaging material, then also that gives a huge shift in the operational printing facilities and how they should produce that material on their machines, their presses, and so forth. So I think, and if that comes about and becomes reality, I think that will start and boost the entire industry again, if we can come away from plastic. So, and I think that's a fantastic goal to chase.
That's
and
big.
maybe yes, as a last question here, in what time frame do you think, or do you hope this can be done?
I'm still optimistic that we will see a massive shift before 2030. Unfortunately, deadlines are creeping. We're looking more at 2040 now, having a bold, hairy goal for 2050, but the derivatives for 2040 and 2030 are there. They're weakening, as we see, as the world is also taking a little bit of a different stance. I'm still very hopeful. Not only hopeful, I'm convinced that we have turned the corner already, and that what comes from certain streams, notably in the US, is more of a background battle. Mm-hmm. I'm excited if I look at what's the dynamic of COP30, what's happening in Brazil, and despite the fact that big nations are turning their back on this debate, just this morning on LinkedIn, a friend of mine is there right now, and he said it's the sensation of being there with a willing coalition, with people that are action oriented, is just phenomenal. And I think this is we're beyond the point of no return. There is something that is in our minds settling in. So I'm convinced that brand owners who are now still maybe hesitant in terms of refitting their production lines, the cost will ultimately be pushed over by consumer preference. And I know it's very difficult to sell a Kit Kat or a Mars at 20% higher cost because of the packaging. The consumer will say, well, that's not what we hoped for. But ultimately, also there will be a compromise with the right product at the right cost, with the right interest, promoted on its right attributes, that we will find that way. So I'm more than hopeful.
Okay, well, fantastic. On that note, if it becomes mainstream, I mean, let's hope it will get there for the benefit of our industry, but also for the environment, of course. Yeah. So regarding leadership, I mean, leadership is also consequently in transition with all the consolidations in our industry as a whole. What leadership lesson do you think are most relevant for our entrepreneurs in the graphic sector looking to reinvent themselves?
Yeah. I think in general, and the industry has proven to have that ability. We need to be more agile than ever before, and with that comes almost an organic leadership style. Where you asked me, what is the timeline that these changes will take place? I don't know exactly, but I know it's coming. So you need to be prepared for change, and And agile is very much an overused word. And we've looked at certain very good aspects in our organization, but only and not very religiously, but only with one objective: to become, call it an organic leadership company where people are willing to drive the opportunity once it presents itself. And I know this sounds woolly, but I want to get away from the autocratic versus the inclusive leadership, because at times I like to be slightly more autocratic to avoid too much discussion, and at times you want to be a little bit more closer to the stakeholders and try to have a buy-in. So we call it situational leadership. There's a certain leadership style for certain points in time, but altogether I would call it organic. It's something you have to grow and sometimes shrink with your company, and that's our industry. Our industry is not one of steady growth over 10, 15, 20 years. It's one of shrinking or right sizing at certain times and have the ability to grow at other times. And we've seen it. We unfortunately had to close capacity, and with that had to lay off many of our great colleagues. But hopefully there will be a time, call it the organic other time, that you can look at growth and open up your scope again.
Yeah, well, fantastic, Marco. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. We have to keep our eyes open, as we've always done.
Yes.
Even more so for the future, for things that are coming our way. And like you explained, they will be coming. It's
absolutely.
It's uncertain for the time when it will come, but yeah, keep your eyes open and don't do too much foolish things, and go for the certainties, I guess, for now. So, exactly. Marco, thank you so much for your insights. It's always nice to hear from somebody who is on the helm of different fronts in our industry. So thank you, Marco. And if there is any news, I'm sure we'll catch up sometime next. Thank you. And guys, also you, we'll catch you in the next one. See you then.
Bye. Okay. Bye.